Welcome, everybody, to our latest webinar in the Roundtable for a Customer Revolution series. This is Jeff Ernst. I'm co-founder and CEO of Slap5, which is the end-to-end customer marketing platform. I'm going to be joined today by Bill Lee and Jake Sorofman, who we'll be introducing in just a minute. But let me just give you a little bit on why we wanted to choose this topic today on how to be a force for a customer-centric culture. The reason for that is because a lot of the folks that I talk to, especially customer marketing and customer advocacy professionals, they wish that their companies were a little more customer-centric. They wish they felt a little more empowered to do what's right for the customer and to make customers happy. And that's a trend and a situation that I think occurs in all too many companies. And so that's why we decided to have a session specifically on that. What I call the intersection of employee engagement and customer engagement is really where we are here, but really to talk about how you folks as customer marketers, customer engagement, customer experience professionals can be a force for driving a customer-centric culture shift within your organizations. And before we do that, I did want to just take a quick poll to get a sense for where we're starting from with our attendees on the call today. I'm going to share results. Nobody took the bait on our company makes no effort to be employee-centric or customer-centric. That's good. We talk a lot about it. We get a lot of lip service to it, but don't consistently deliver a great experience. That's a quarter of us. We strive, we make valiant efforts, great. Our senior leaders put a big emphasis on it. That's about 35% of us. And then the holy grail, where every employee feels empowered to do whatever it takes to enrich the lives of our customers, 17%. And frankly, I'm a little surprised it's that high. So let me introduce Bill. So Bill Lee, I've been a follower of Bill's for many years because he is the thought leader in the whole customer marketing, customer advocacy, customer engagement space. But then I had the opportunity to have dinner with Bill after his conference a couple of years ago. And we had one of these amazing meeting of the minds conversations about the state of customer marketing and what we need to do or what we should do to try to improve the profession and elevate everybody's role within their company. Because there's the traditional 3 R's of customer marketing, but I've made up a new 3 R's. It's respect, recognition, and resources. And if we want to get respect, recognition, and resources as customer X professionals, we really need to be doing much more to support the purpose of our companies. And the purpose of any company should really be all about just totally doing everything we can to enrich the lives of our customers. So that's why I thought this was a perfect topic. And Bill and I had that amazing conversation. And then that's when we decided we were going to team up to conduct this roundtable for a customer revolution. So with that, let me just turn it over to Bill. Before I do that, I just wanted to give people a heads up that we're going to have Fred Reichheld on our April session for the roundtable for a customer revolution. Fred has just released a new book in December called Winning on Purpose. I've been reading this book for the last couple of weeks, and I tell you, I'm not getting a lot of sleep at night because I just keep plugging away until 2 or 3 in the morning because it is so inspiring. And Fred, for those of you that don't know him, he's the creator of the Net Promoter System. And this book talks a lot about not just how to conduct NPS, but what it really takes to be a company that embraces customers and really does empower everybody to want to do whatever they can to enrich the lives of their customers with lots of great examples. But and especially talks about how to not just doing Net Promoter Score and getting the number, but how you can use the whole process to improve the way that you make customers happy. So with that, let me turn it over to you, Bill.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. And good morning, good afternoon, everybody. By the way, I share your sentiments on that dinner we had. I remember very well. It was extraordinary. So as part of the things that we've done since then, we formed something we called a Roundtable for a Customer Revolution. And we call this the Roundtable for a Customer Revolution webinar series. And this goes back to the incredible at the discussions, research that we did and so forth with this group of founders. And as you can see, we invited only superstars in tech, very exclusive. And we believe that the insights and current thinking and practice that we've come up with and analyzed and discussed in depth that regards customers, we think that the framework that we have set up represents the best thinking in the world on the modern customer relationship, better than anything McKinsey's coming out with, or Bain, or Gartner, you name it. We'll see what Jeff thinks about. I mentioned Gartner there. We'll see what he thinks shortly. And we'll continue to do research, share roundtable findings throughout this year, and make it available to you through channels like this. For now, just 3 quick insights to give you a sense of the centrality that customer success and customer marketing is going to be playing in this new relationship, in this new world. Insight number 1, the customer marketing profession has the potential to explode like customer success has done in the last 5 to 7 years. And sure enough, ripped from the headlines. Next slide, please, Jeff. LinkedIn just announced last month that customer marketing, hit it again, I've got a little build in there. Customer marketing is now the number 3 in LinkedIn's jobs on the rise in the US in 2022. It's an exciting time for this profession. And then number 2 insight, to reach its potential, customer marketing needs professionals who are ambitious. And when I say ambitious, they are ambitious to get to senior leadership. And that means specifically to get a seat at the strategy table, wherever you're working. If that's you, you're our core audience for these webinars and other things we'll be providing. And finally, number 3, customer success plus customer marketing. Think of that as a unity, working together, join at the hip, as they sometimes say, is poised to eat the world. And we really probably should come up with a better phrase than that. It sounds a little bit like I don't know, eat your own dog food. Now we're saying drink your own champagne. We need something like that for eat the world. But anyway, that's the good news. That's the potential. That's the opportunity in both of these professions. And with that, let's get on with inventing this new world. Jeff, do you have anything else before we start? Before I introduce our very exciting guest?
No, let's jump in. And I especially want to hear you talk about this, because this what you're showing here was one of the very profound concepts that Jake introduced in our roundtable, which is something that I've been using now, but I don't want to steal the thunder. I want you to explain it. And if you don't cover how I use this in my thinking today, I will add on to it at the end.
Well, this is something that will be the basis of a rich conversation for some time, I think. But I definitely want to get Jake's perspective on this. So let me introduce our special guest, Jake Sorofman. Jake is a CMO of Visier. He is a former CMO of Pendo IO, which is legendary in B2B SaaS firms. He guided Pendo through turning it into a unicorn, as they say, to $1 billion valuation. And by the time he was done, they were at a 2.5 billion valuation. He's an exceptional executive. And he's also a first-class thinker. He's the former chief of research at Gartner. And also currently, for other connections he has that you may be familiar with, he's an advisor to G2, formerly G2 Crowd. And then best of all, as far as I'm concerned, he's a member of the Roundtable for a Customer Revolution. He's one of the founders. And then a little fun fact about Jake: he has a captain's license, and he has spent most of his lifetime either on the ocean or actively dreaming of being on the ocean. And you can kind of see that in his picture. He has this windswept look about him, like a man of the sea. So Jake, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. That's a very kind introduction. The last part in particular is very, very true. I have salt in my veins. So when I'm not sailing or on the ocean, otherwise I am thinking about it. So it's kind of my reason for being, my purpose, you might say. So, and I know that's a lot of what we'll talk about today is purpose, because I think that's really what transforms companies and really deepens a customer relationship, is an understanding and alignment between the purpose of the company and the customer.
Well put. So I want to start with this. Jeff and I call this the peace sign. It was a seminal moment in our roundtable discussions. It was like bracing. There was very few of those moments, as you would expect. Those don't come along frequently in a person's lifetime, but that definitely was one of them. So let me suggest that culture here on this graphic is over. It's part of ideas and innovation. Would be where I would position this, because purpose, after all, is the idea of the business. It's the reason that a business that a business exists. It's the idea around which you build your culture. That's a question, Jake. Am I close?
Yeah, 100%. I think of the relationship between the customer and the company around ideas for future product direction as being, really essential. Of course, customer voice and understanding customer needs and wants is a big part of how we innovate and how we progress a company and a product and a culture. Of course, there is the, Steve Jobs quote of great infamy that I think is quite true, which is that, our customers aren't innovators. I think the misquoted Henry Ford quote that if I asked my customers what they wanted, they'd tell me faster horses, is both a bit of a fallacy, because I don't think he actually said that, but so true. Customers aren't necessarily visionaries. So it is important to listen to them, but with a lens toward, their needs and wants, and also what you see as the thing that they haven't given voice to or don't have the language to describe. So that's the lens for that piece. And then I think the second one is very straightforward, which is customer proof. It's taking your customers' stories and using them as the basis for how you activate the flywheel to drive growth for your organization. So customer proof is the currency of modern marketing, and I think everyone understands this one. And the third one I think is the most important, actually. And this is where the magic happens in my experience, and that's customers to customers. I've learned more from customers than customers have ever learned from me, and I'm sure that that's the case for everybody on this call. If you've been open to learning and you've been really tuned in to what customers have to say, I'd say 20% of customers are often out in the leading edge, doing things that are more creative and more revolutionary than the companies themselves. And to the extent that you can create venues and experiences where customers come together and share those learnings and those best practices, and even more importantly, the energy and passion, that is the magic. That is absolutely the magic that makes this flywheel spin.
And Jake, I'll just add so that the way I've now taken this and run with it in my life, and the work that I do trying to enrich the lives of my customers who are customer marketers, is I use this as a framework for showing people and working with people on how to design your customer programs to make sure that you're taking into account all of these three different types of customer engagement, right? There's customer to company engagement that customer marketers need to be orchestrating and making sure that they're making happen consistently, and then not just making, what they sometimes forget to do is make sure you're also infusing those great customer insights that you've been gathering into every fiber of your company. But then, the customer to market and customer to customer, these are all three key components of a comprehensive customer engagement program that's going to really improve and increase the influence that customer marketers are having on driving the growth initiatives of their companies.
100%, Jeff. And you just made me think of something that I think when we first came up with this model was certainly not in my active consciousness. That is so much so today, which is that customer marketing can fundamentally change the culture of an organization. And we talked about purpose. Purpose for many people is transforming the lives and careers and delivering value to customers, and seeing how passionate customers can be about that, and the sort of transformational experience that you can provide for them, and bring that to life in ways that is, like indelible and emotional and resonant, and not just problem solution impact sort of platitudes. I'm talking about like the real human stories behind the customers. That is the stuff that I think can really transform a culture. And particularly now that's important because people are looking for things to believe in. They're looking for a stronger sense of connection to what they spend 10, 12, 14 hours a day doing. And you hear my dogs in the background doing from home. I can't remember the last time I left my home office. So I think this is the shared reality we're all living in. And this greater connection to the things that have more emotional resonance, I think matter more today than ever before.
So Jeff, let me ask you a question. Let's say you are, I believe you have a head of CM, customer marketing at Visier. Let's play pretend a little bit. Let's say you were hiring now.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've just hired this person recently. But let's say you're hiring a customer marketer. Two questions. I've got two questions for you. The first question is, what are you looking for in their resume?
That's a good question. I think curiosity and creativity are really important. Those may be obvious answers, and that doesn't necessarily show through in a resume. But when I meet this person, I'm looking for someone who is, driven by curiosity to really understand what's behind the headline, what's behind the logo, who are the humans within those organizations, and what do they stand for? What do they care about? What do they aspire to? And how have we made their lives and their careers better, their day-to-day better? And how can we serve their needs? And how can we turn that into a narrative that really gets others excited internally and externally about what our customers are doing? So it's that curiosity to know, that curiosity to learn, and instinct for active listening, being attuned to the human side, not just the standard problem solution impact ROI stories, things that people kind of take with a grain of salt anyway because they understand how the sausage is made. Yeah. I think the real impactful stuff is much more human. And so you're looking for people that are drawn to that and know how to tease it out, and then know how to think about creative ways of activating that. How do you bring it to life in ways that are unexpected and real and authentic and kind of creative? So that's really how I would look at it. The person that we have running customer marketing is a great person. He's been here for 6 months, another Boston guy. And I worked with him 22 years ago, I think. So so it's just one of those connections that we make along the course of our career, where we find and keep people close who we like to work with.
Well, I'd put everything you just said under the classification of human traits,
100%.
the human factor, as opposed to technical skills and so forth. And I think that's a pretty common trend that's going on these days. And certainly, I think our advice to anybody here, like when you're looking for a job and so forth, to be sure and look for that, the extent, the range of humanism, human traits that they display, both at the senior level when they're giving you their patter, as well as other employees down in the ranks when you're talking to them. So great point there, and let Jeff. We're very interactive here, Jake.
Yeah.
Jeff, are you getting any?
Yeah.
I'm seeing some chat.
Well, yeah, before we look at the chat to see the questions there, I did want to just dig into something you just said, Jake, because it made me think of one of my observations is, and again, I'm getting into some brass tacks for the customer marketers in our audience today, is that you talked about the human element, the personal element, and how important it is for us to have that in our, not only our personality, but our MO.
Yeah.
And but so many times though, I hear from my customer marketing friends and folks and clients that their senior executives only care about customer proof that has hard ROI. It has to be numeric.
Yeah.
And that seems to kind of go against this idea of bringing our customer stories to life and having them tell stories about how we've enriched their lives. Because how we've enriched their lives isn't always that we delivered 126% ROI in the first year. It's, we made them a hero in their company. We made them a hero in their industry. And I know from all the buyer research I did at that other analyst firm in Cambridge called Forrester, that's what drives buyers. That's what moves buyers, is the emotional connection, not just the logic. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. I think that quantifying the impact is important, but it's kind of necessary but insufficient when you think about what it takes to really move people to action. That is largely for building the business case internally. So that's more of a CYA tactic. Someone needs to be able to substantiate a business case to secure a budget and protect their own hides. But it isn't the thing that necessarily drives them to action. The thing that drives them to action is saying, this company is painting a better future that I want to be part of, and I want to lead my company there. I want to be a hero. I see this as a feather in my cap, a portfolio-worthy career-making experience that is going to set me apart. It's not going to only deliver impact for my company, but it's going to make a difference from me in my trajectory in life. And I think back to the early days of digital marketing, and I think the digital marketing platforms, notably HubSpot, Marketo, Eloqua, did this brilliantly, where they created a movement. They created a purpose around what they were doing that marketers really attached to, and they wore their affiliation with those platforms as a badge of pride, and they developed all the skills around it. They hitched the wagon to one of those three in particular and built careers around it. We saw something very similar at Pendo, where product managers who were not particularly accustomed to buying tools and thinking about technology in that regard saw a platform that was purpose-built for them and by product managers who really understood the jobs to be done within their world and wanted to give them the tools they deserved. And it became more than we can deliver hard ROI, although that was necessary for building the case, and much more about we stand for you, we are you.
Let me segue that then. Excellent points. Let me segue that into impact the customer marketers are having on their business. Because the irony here is the better you treat customers, customer marketers and customer success folks, with some exceptions, don't have these conflicts of interest where they're on commission or they're being, how many leads did you generate, stuff like that. So they're free to develop these much more meaningful relationships that you describe. But then here's the irony. What happens is when they start doing this, they start crushing major, difficult business objectives like retention, like adoption, like improving innovation, cutting costs when they become an issue, and so forth. And we've got one of the things we did as part of the roundtable is we created this crush list of examples of customer marketing, customer engagement people who stepped into difficult challenges, strategic challenges, stepped in where marketing was not getting traction. Nobody, the usual suspects, if you will, weren't getting traction, and they went in and crushed it. And the animating factor here was putting simplicity itself, putting customers together.
Totally.
That is such an underused resource, I guess, because it's too simple. You don't have somebody in the room making sure everybody stays on message, and things like that. So that's the great irony of this, and I think the great potential. And I think it's something Fred, when he comes and meets with us, Jeff, in April, I broached this with him when I talked to him last month, and it's amazing to me that Net Promoter Score people never think about what to do with their promoters. It's always go get more detractors and turn them into promoters, and then the promotion and other wonderful things will just happen.
Right.
It's not true.
No.
There's some research on this, and Fred seemed finally, he keynoted one of our first summits back when we called ourselves the Customer Reference Forum and so forth. I've known him for some time. I know Richard Owen very well, the founder of Sadmetrics that implements Net Promoter Score. It never registered with them. And now I think it finally is starting to. So
Yeah.
your
Like, what do you
ability
do
to
once you know that they're a promoter, there's a next step. It's how you activate that,
right.
how you animate it. I like that word.
Right.
So it's again, it's exciting times. So
and Bill, I was going to say, so our friend Chris Adler just posed a good question that I think ties right into what we're talking about here, and also ties into what Fred Reichheld talks a lot about in his book about if you think about it, our purpose should really be about enriching the lives of customers. But in too many companies, their purpose is profit, right? Everything is profit motive or margin motive. And so I think Chris's question ties nicely into that. He's saying CEOs are under huge pressure to drive short-term revenue gain and profitability. This drives more reactive silo-based thinking, example in marketing, an unhealthy focus on lead volumes and sales in the pipeline. How do you convince a CEO to park short-termism and focus on a more sustainable, albeit more medium-term form of growth?
I think yeah, I mean, it's an amazing question. I think there's a very simple calculation that CEOs will understand, which is just look at the CAC of a repeat customer who's buying more versus a net new customer. The acquisition cost is a fraction. And then think about the long-term value, the lifetime value of that customer, but also the extended lifetime value of them as an advocate and driving more customer acquisition, filling top of funnel for you. And to me, it's clear as day. Like, our growth team, because we've spent 10, 11 years putting goodwill in the bank by delivering the right way for our customers, it's a pretty easy job. Well, I hope they're not on this call. They probably wouldn't admit that it's an easy job, but it's customers want more. And the acquisition cost is negligible for expanding that customer relationship. And then the more they buy, the more they consume, the more value we deliver for them, the more active they want to become as public advocates, which drives the flywheel. It's just as simple as that.
Chris, that's a great question. Thanks for that. Another thing I would suggest is that I wonder if we should be thinking of customer marketing as in kind of it's a crossing the chasm situation that I'm sure many of you are familiar with. It's like a new idea doesn't just start in the mainstream, it doesn't start getting traction in the mainstream market, like that. You've got to start with the early adopters and the visionaries in your market. And I think for those of you looking for jobs or looking for your next job or your next position, the early adopter is somebody you don't have to convince of this. Mm-hmm. They'll hear these things and they'll go, that's what I've been looking for. And our hypothesis is they are out there. So that would be number one. And then number two would be what Jake suggests. There definitely is hard data out there on treating customers in these ways and engaging them with each other in these ways and so forth. There's certainly plenty of hard data. And by the way, Fred, in his book, he's got hard data, lots of it. So those would be another way to.
And that hard data, I don't want to give away the thunder, but it supports the points we're making here, is that if you look at the companies that are the best financial performers over a 10-year period, I mean, you can look back and see that they were the ones that were performing best on whether it's Net Promoter Score or whatever their flavor of customer loyalty and advocacy is that they're using. There's a direct correlation that whereas the companies that might be high flyers one day that aren't really having a customer culture or a company culture around enriching the lives of their customers, they tend to tail off. They might be high flyers one year because they came out with a hot product or something, but but they're not listening to their customers, or they're not truly customer centric, and they'll tail off. And so I think that's another argument, if you pull out some of that data that you can use if you're trying to make an argument to your C-level executives on the importance of this. I mean, this is what drives that long-term sustainable financial results that you're looking for.
And it changes your culture. And, we all know the importance of culture in driving high performance as an organization. And there's a virtuous cycle that happens when you tell the stories of your customers in the right ways. It gives your employees more purpose, which makes them more engaged, which delivers a better customer experience. And there's this virtuous cycle that you create.
Yeah.
And you mentioned stories, the keyword story right there. I know that's big in your mind, the importance of stories in shaping culture, but I wonder if that's a good transition point. And Bill, let me know if you were going to go down a different path, but I wonder if this is a good transition point to start to tell our audience about what can they do, because our customer marketers, they might be in the middle of the organization, or they might not feel so empowered, or they might feel like there's not a lot I can do to shift the culture of my company, or to try to improve the experience that we're delivering, or to better engage customers. But what are some things that customer marketing professionals, customer experience professionals should be doing, could be doing, even if they're just little things that just sort of nudge the culture in the right direction?
Yeah, I'll give you a few examples. When I joined my current company, Visier, a little less than a year ago, one of the reasons I joined is because we had the highest NPS score I'd ever seen in B2B SaaS, and amazing customers, just tremendous logos. And I think we had done an average job at activating the advocacy, the goodwill that they had. And one of the things I've said is that we have plenty of content. What we have is a packaging problem. So I think that this is the case for a lot of companies, is you probably have a fair number of customer stories, but you're telling them the wrong way. So there's an opportunity to go back and repackage. Almost think of it as the role of, like, you're remixing content and finding different ways to package and surface, the real resonant truths within those stories. Sometimes we bury the lead. We write these really long, boring case studies that are formulaic, problem, solution, impact. People's eyes bleed when they try to read them. They're just not engaging. How do you take the nuggets out of it that are really going to speak to the truth that you're trying to convey, and serve it up in a way that's more spoon-fed and consumable? And it doesn't necessarily have to be new. You probably have it hiding in plain sight. It's just a question of sifting through it and finding those nuggets.
So Jake, is there specific questions? Let's get a little down in the weeds here. Specific questions that you ask these customers. And Jeff, I know you've got a lot of experience with this too, so I want to hear from both of you on that. Well, how do you do this? How do you get that information? What does it look like?
It's a great question. I don't know if I have a great answer, to be honest. I think a lot of it is, I don't like, and part of this is my personality. I'm a bit unprepared would be the way to say it, but I like to see it as spontaneous. I'd rather have the real conversation than show up with a script and see where the conversation leads me, than to show up with, the formulaic questions that are going to drive very predictable answers. I'd rather take it down the blind alleys and see where it goes. But I think the essence of the conversations that I want to have are the day in the life. And the technique of asking 5 whys, I love. It can be annoying, but I think it can be really effective. Is don't take the answer on face value. Just continue to ask why until you get to the real truth driving the need, and just find the additional dimensions and layers that are behind the platitude.
Yeah, love that, Jake.
And if I could add that, Let me just build on that, because maybe another way of saying what Jake was just describing is that two ways I think of getting to that emotional kernel, which you're really trying to surface here. A lot of times the scripted formulaic interview guides are all about the standard questions. Why'd you decide to make a change, and why'd you select us, and things like that.
Exactly.
And you do need to ask those questions, but what I always do is I probe deeper. So when I ask that question, like, why did you decide you couldn't live another day with what the solution you had and you had to make a change, right? It's something like that, because every buyer wants to know why your customers made a change, but they don't want the logical reason. They want the emotional. And so the first answer somebody will always give me is something like, well, our XYZ process was very inefficient and it was causing problems with this process and that process. So very logical. And then I'll always ask them, well, what was the downside of that? And what harm was that causing your company? And then they might peel another layer of the onion and start talking about the harm and that it was causing the company. And then I would ask them again, well, how did that impact you personally?
Yeah,
and that's when you get the gold, right? When you ask them, how did it impact you personally? They're like, oh my God, I thought I was going to lose my job, and I was losing sleep every night because I care so much about customer experience, and I'm trying to drive this change. And that's what, and then you'll see their energy level just rise, right? Especially if you're recording it on video when you do things like that. And then for people that have already done, oodles and oodles of customer interviews and have video recordings and things like that, the sad part is that all they usually extract out of that are the formulaic, challenge, solution, result, and then the happy quotes.
Yes.
They always go for the happy quotes, the platitudes. But if you go back through an hour transcript of a video recording of a customer interview that was done to write your little 3-page case study or your 3.5-minute testimonial video, 98% of it hit the cutting room floor. But the most valuable part is in the 98% that hit the cutting room floor. It's not the platitudes. And so I really encourage people to go back and think about it. Be more surgical in your questions and probing in the first place to get to the emotional layers, and then make sure you're pulling those out, because that's what changes behavior and changes mindset and moves people to take action. People being your buyers.
I love that. So maybe it's not 5 whys, it's 3. It's just get to the nugget, the kernel that's really about them. And people like talking about themselves, by the way. So you give them that opportunity, and they'll generally take you up on it.
Right. Okay, let's see. Jeff, have you seen any questions?
Julie, yeah, so we've talked about sort of the anatomy of stories, right, and how powerful they are, and to pull the richness. I think Julie Thomas is asking a good one here. Any tips on best ways to better share those customer stories throughout the organization? How do you push them in to every part of the organization whose mindsets you're trying to shift? Because we all get frustrated that the people over in this department, maybe their function doesn't require them to have as much customer contact as we do, but they care nothing about the customer, right? And then sometimes we complain about even these people that are in a customer facing role that just don't seem to really understand the importance. And so we all want to push that, push the insights, whether it's in story form, whatever format it is. So how can we do that?
Yeah, a couple of things come to mind here. I write a Friday note every week, and I've done that off and on throughout my career for my team, and I've started sharing it with the broader company. So I use that as an opportunity to synthesize my learnings from the week and observations, things that are coming to life in my experience in the business, and often includes things related to customers or related to our vision and how we serve customers. So that's one way. It's just this continuous pulse of this conversation that I'm building with the broader company. And I just do it on Slack. And it's, anywhere between 200 and 700 words, depending on how the spirit moves me. And so that's one. The second thing, and this was a conversation I was having yesterday with someone on my team, we have an OEM business, which is, we have thousands and thousands of customers through that channel, whose stories are not often told. And some of them are really extraordinary, and some of them are unexpected. Like, wow, they're our customer. So the recommendation was that we build this tradition of weekly, we're publishing on Slack to the company a did you know post, which is tied in because we have thousands of customers to draw from, tied into something current, something timely. Maybe it's the Super Bowl on Sunday. And using that as sort of the news peg, so to speak, to tell a story about an unexpected customer. And just doing that as this curiosity. And I'm really a big fan of, like, you know, ritual, rhythm, habit. You know, you do it every week on a Thursday, and people start expecting it and looking forward to it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. I'll give you another example of something that I did at Forrester. I created the Forrester Frontlines program, which was their first ever global customer voice and engagement program. And we had a product management team that was designing new products, our service offerings, responsible for continuing to enhance them. But they didn't really have a lot of direct customer contact. And so I started creating forums as part of the customer to company engagement of our peace sign, you know, the model that we showed earlier.
Yeah.
Actually creating sessions where they were struggling with trying to figure out where to take this product or something like that. You know, guess what? I have this talent pool for you. It's called our customer base, who are part of this program. Let's pull some sessions together where you can present what you're thinking to them, and you can let them riff on it and give you real live feedback. And all of a sudden, the product management team went from really not supporting my program at all to all of a sudden coming to me every month saying, Jeff, can you organize another one of those sessions? We have this that we're trying to figure out. Can you do another one of these sessions?
Yeah.
So it's just, I mean, you can be orchestrating these. You know, don't just wait for them to come to you saying, we need some customer insight. Look for pockets in the company where people are struggling with decisions, because there's no better voice to infuse into any decision-making process than the customer's voice. And way too many of these decisions are made without the customer's voice.
Yeah.
100%.
We've got a question that related to that. We got a question here from Dave. Would like to hear about thoughts on attribution pre-purchase versus post-purchase objectives like customer attribution for upsell, cross-sell, subscription renewals, and so forth. Obviously, an awareness, pre-sale consideration, and so forth and so on. Attribution for that, and it's tough if you do that. If you attempt to affect these phases of the journey through marketing or through sales or through some other organization where you're just part of a big mix and nobody quite knows what role the customers play. Think about, get simple. Just get, I'll give you a little tip from Mark Benioff. Back in the day when he was growing Salesforce, he began to learn that getting customers together with prospects was all you needed. And he started doing,
100%.
he started just doing events where you just get them together. And one of his salespeople came up to him. He was a new salesperson, sales executive. He said, okay, well, I'm going to invite these salespeople here. What do you think about them? No salesperson needed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
no salesperson needed. In fact, it detracts from the conversations that these people want to have. And the numbers were astounding. The numbers here were clear. Those were the only drivers.
Yeah.
Right? Customers and prospects talking. 80% of prospects who attended those events and had the opportunity to have these conversations, 80% wound up becoming customers, and nobody questioned that metric.
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying is 100% right, and I think if I were to summarize it, is if you're trying to measure with precision, you already got it wrong. Like, this is just create the experiences that make customer stories come to life for your prospects, and good things will happen. And you'll see it in correlation. But if you try to measure it with precision, you're probably looking through the wrong end of the telescope.
Right. So Jake, I have a question for you. So you've been, your last role at MetaCX, you were on the very customer-centric, customer-focused side.
Yeah.
You're now in a company that is very employee
Yes.
employee culture, employee engagement focused. So I'm curious. So that transition wasn't just random.
No, it wasn't.
What does it mean to you, this journey that you're on in your career, and how can you tie that back to what people in our audience can learn from?
Yeah. I don't know if this is the right audience to share this thought with, but I'll do it anyway. I think, the last 25 years have been largely about the customer, acquiring them, retaining them, growing their lifetime value. The next 25 years will be all about the employee. It's a shift that's happening. It's not to say that we don't need to invest in the customer. Of course we do. But I think the way we do that needs to change. We've already made very significant investment in transforming our cultures to serve the customer and our processes and our ability to understand and listen and react. That's happened. Still happening to a degree, but I think the area that really needs significant urgent attention is doing the same for your employees. Understanding, learning from, reacting to, serving. And there's a value exchange similar to what you see within an open market between companies and customers. There's a value exchange with employees that I don't think is understood or optimized. It's about the impact that your employees have on your business, so measuring their outcomes. But it's also about the impact the business is having on your employee. And that's really what Visier is all about, is that listening and understanding. A lot of the same principles apply in the world of CX to the world of EX. And I just think that now's the moment for that wave to really take off.
And I imagine because you have worked on both sides, you're at that pivot point now, to focus on the employee side, the EX side, but they go hand in hand, right? I mean, you can't really point to a company that's done a great job with enriching the lives of customers that doesn't have a culture of empowerment for their employees. Could you tell us a little bit about that? Like what's the critical glue there at that point of intersection? And dig into that, because that would be so valuable, I think, to our audience.
Yeah, I mean, I describe it as the art of deeply giving a shit, if you don't mind me putting it that way. And I think that it is that virtuous cycle of if you care about your employees and you give them a sense of purpose and understanding why they're working so hard on your behalf, your customers will benefit from that. And the fact that your customers are benefiting from it and you're able to bring that to life, which is the role of customer marketing, can really sort of create that virtuous cycle and fundamentally transform your culture as an organization. One cannot exist without the other. And we've seen this in the data. There's a very strong correlation between eNPS and NPS scores. But I think it's bigger than that. It's more all-encompassing and important than that.
Please elaborate. Bigger in what sense?
Bigger in the sense that that simple metric and measure doesn't do justice to the broader significance of what I'm just saying.
Sure. That's why we're calling this a revolution. We were looking at the customer part of this. There's an employee revolution. There's a business revolution. The way we think of business needs to be changed dramatically. Down to the roots. And these are the two main pillars, along with the purpose. Those are really, I think there's another flywheel that we've got going on here. Purpose, employees, customers. That's the flywheel. And a lot of that flywheel, the animating force behind that flywheel is purpose.
100%.
And the purpose, and Fred's going to talk about this. I can't believe that he came to this conclusion. Jeff, and for anybody else who's read it, he's saying he is prescribed. He's never done this before that I know of. He's prescribing the purpose of every business is to engage with your customer or serve your customer or create a great customer experience. No.
Deliver happiness.
None of the above. Deliver happiness. Although Zoom's doing that, they're doing pretty well with it. But his prescription is you've got to love your customer.
Right.
he's got a whole chapter on the golden rule. Talk about getting back to basics. And then he shows with powerful, Jake, I push back just a little bit on the metrics. I think he needed metrics for this. And one of his more astounding was mentioned by Jeff earlier, that companies that score high on net promoter score in their industries, who score at the highest, compare those with Jim Collins, the good to great guy and so forth, in which his companies, the good to great companies, over the next 10 years after Jim Collins wrote his book, they were all in the crapper, so to speak. Since we're talking real here, net promoter companies that lead their industry in net promoters, their success continued forward because they're building, to Jake's point, something long-term and lasting and built on human nature. We're all fighting human nature in so many of our businesses. All you got to do is just serve basic human nature, and it becomes much more straightforward.
Couldn't agree more, Bill.
Jake, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think that we overcomplicate things. And of course, you could argue that a lot of this feels ethereal, and that you need to pin it to more specific measurable things. But I think the essence of what you just described is 100% right.
And related to this, to tie it back to some of the things that our audience can control or can influence as customer marketers, a lot of times, like my premise, and I even said this to Fred Reichheld the other night, about is that too many companies use Net Promoter Score just as a basis to set executive bonuses on whether it goes up or down or whatever, and they use it as a target, and that's it. And and the classic example of that is the car manufacturers and car dealerships. Every time you buy a car, your car salesman is going to say, is there any reason why you're not going to give me a 10? If there is, let me know right now so I can correct it, because you have to give me a 10 or else I'm going to get fired. And so they game the system. Whereas Apple, on the other hand, in the Apple stores, they use Net Promoter Score and the feedback, not just the number, but they use the feedback to diagnose and at a store employee level, figure what can we do to improve the way we do it, to improve the way we talk to our customers, to improve the way we look them in the eye, to improve our mannerisms, whatever it might be, and really empower their employees in the store to come up with ways to take the insights that they're getting from the NPS survey responses every week. They do that, they go through them, and so they're really putting it into action. And I think that's where too many companies are failing down. That's one of the issues I see at the intersection of customer engagement and employee engagement, is that the customer engagement and customer satisfaction insights can really be used to drive that employee engagement, and to start to shift those mindsets to make those that may not be naturally or intuitively customer centric to start to be that way.
100%. And as you're saying, I think the real learnings come from the verbatims, not from the score itself. So how do you capture the real sentiment and mind that, map it to the moment, so you understand what's the cause of that positive or negative feeling. That's where it's more than just an aggregated metric that people can hide behind. And by the way, someone asked about when and where to use NPS, customer effort score, CSAT. You need to use all of them. Like I don't think NPS alone is sufficient by any means. And different channels call for different measures. A post-sale service experience, CSAT, is the right score. A website experience effort score is the right score. You want to roll all these things up and look at it as a constellation of metrics. And
one thing we strongly advocate is, before you set priorities, excuse me, in your customer marketing program or your customer success program, before you set, as a process for setting priorities, start with the senior leader objectives that they are struggling with or that aren't getting traction. What is their top priority? the chances are good, and Jeff and I are both, we have a standing offer. If you get that information and it's coming from your senior leadership about an objectives they're struggling with, then we'll give you a free call and give you some guidance on how to think about and do something to not only meet, but perhaps even crush that objective that your C-suite is struggling with. That's where you want to start. We're here to help. One other question here I wanted to get to: better ways to share customers' stories through the organization. What are some better ways to do that? I'll give one thing is you got to get to know, especially your senior leadership, build relationships with them. And a lot of you are good at this, and you're getting better at developing relationships. You go introduce yourself, you develop an ongoing, some kind of relationship with them so they know who you are, what you're doing, what it has to do with them. And then start sharing these stories with them in areas where they're struggling. For example, one of our Roundtable executives was having trouble getting the board of her company. She was CMO at the time. She was having trouble getting the board to give her a budget for a campaign that she was planning, and they just weren't getting it. They didn't see how this was worth it. They were pushing back and so forth. So finally, her market was data security, people, managers, executives, and so forth. Data security. Think about that. Think of the stress these people were in. So in her presentation, she told the story of, to Jake's point, a day in their life. What is it like in their day? Starting with getting up, like kind of in a cold sweat, what's happened overnight, what blew up, and so forth, all through the day. She describes this to them, a couple of paragraphs or so, in her, a nice, concise summary of what their day was like. Board approval, just like that. And to Jay's point, no numbers needed, because when you touch people emotionally, that's the magic. That's what gets them to decide, and that's what she does, and that's what you all can do. That's something you can do for your internal people.
Perfect.
Well, we're at the top of the hour here. I could talk another hour because I'm so fascinated by this topic, but I think we need to respect everybody's time. But Jake, thank you so much. This was amazing insights, and I love what you're doing. And I hope your next 25 years are just as successful as your first 25 years, if not more. So,
well, and I hope you find some way to do your work out in the ocean somewhere, Jake. That's my fondest.
Me too.
I'm sorry.
Me too.
That's my fondest wish for you. So thank you again. It's been great. Thank you for all you've done for this movement.
I appreciate the opportunity, and always a pleasure to talk to you both.
All right. And thank you everybody for joining us today, and stay tuned for our great upcoming sessions every month.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
Take care.